Shade Tree Commission. And the first order of business on our agenda is approval of reading and approval of minutes. If folks would look over the minutes that were circulated. This is the most exciting moment in terms of video, I think. It's 173 ash trees. Yes. We're inventory in the 1991 census inventory of trees in the city. Okay, wire spreading just one address. To use more formal language than to call the summary sheet something like cheat sheet. Yes, that's good. The summary is.
There's quotation marks on it.
Oh, summary.
It's similar.
Condensed
version, but we should hold to some standards. Anything else? Does anybody? Somebody might move to accept the minutes as corrected.
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Thank you very much. The man who
That's
found
an impartial.
Right.
That's
I'll second.
Thank you. The minutes have been moved and seconded to be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Currently,
David.
who's doing them again, I think.
Thank you
very much, David.
Very kind of you.
It's wise not to criticize the minutes because you might end up.
Absolutely.
Well,
I wanted to commend the person who did it.
Well, our first order of business is the Emerald Ash Borer Management Planning. And we have Ron Lucas with us here from Interim Director of Streets. Let's see, in the way of just some overview information, the city is anticipating that at some point we will have to have a plan in place to deal with the menace of emerald ash borer insect, which has the possibility of destroying ash trees in the area, possibly, and the ones we're going to focus on immediately in the immediate future are trees in the city rights-of-way and parks, trees that are hazards, and we're going to follow some suggestions from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources on how one might manage this plan. We have some suggestions from David Ingram, who's done a good boiled-down focusing of what needs to be done. So, an outline. Thank you very much. Now that he doesn't like cheat sheets either.
Synopsis won't do.
And a précis. So, David, if you could please talk a little bit about the outline.
As Zalvi just said, there are basically three types of trees you've got to worry about in the city. Those in the rights of way, those in city parks that will prove to be a hazard if they die, and those on private property, of which we have no authority over, but presumably we will be asked for advice upon, and therefore we need to provide some sort of public information campaign to advise people on what to do and what not to do. And so in identifying the trees in the right of way, we've already got a list of trees that in the old tree inventory. One of the first steps is going to be to figure out how we're going to check those to make sure that that list is actually correct and up to date. We then need to do a complete survey of the trees that are in the parks and in the right of way. But what I see happening is a multi-stage process in which we first of all figure out what it's going to take in terms of resources, people, equipment, and time to do a survey. We've got 173 trees identified already. How long is it going to take us to do that survey? From that we can then figure out how long is it going to take us to do the next stage of the survey and so on. So I think it's going to be step by step. In terms of the city parks, I think we only have to identify the trees that could be a hazard if they die. Trees that are going to fall unheard in the forest are not going to be a problem to us, I think.
Unless someone's standing under them at the time.
Well, exactly. I mean, so you have to figure out where are the areas of potential hazard.
Right.
But
Right.
but if there are large, if there's large spaces that
Right.
have got ash trees in, as we've seen on many private properties, there are many ash trees that are in wooded areas. If they die, they fall. As long as they're not near property or people, then they're not a problem. In terms of the public information campaign, Anne Bonner and the state are already doing quite a bit.
Yeah.
We have additional information if people want to get more information now. The proposal, I think, at one point was to get a presentation prepared for the city website to put up. And that, to me, seems like a logical way to go for the public information campaign.
We've gotten some more information from Anne just recently. Last week, she sent out 2 Ohio Department of Natural Resources press releases, and she shared them. Let's see. Well, I sent these on to the mayor. He may send them out as releases at tomorrow's press conference or use them at another press conference. I don't know. They should also be in your emails. And I have hard copies of these here if you'd like. And they are press releases that, in the end, direct people to call the Ohio Department of Agriculture and how to do that, or the Ohio Division of Forestry if they believe that they have cited signs of an infestation. We have on the government channel, there is a program that's presently playing, which is a bit outdated, but still has good visual information on the emerald ash borer menace. It's called the Green Menace, and it shows some of the characteristics of the insect itself, of how its evidence can be, how evidence of its presence can be identified. They leave very small, 1/8 inch diameter, flat headed kind of D-shaped holes as they exit a tree. And so they're very small things to find. There are trap trees presently in every township, is that right, Emily? In the state?
There are what?
Trap trees.
Trap trees.
Yes.
To determine just how far this thing has come south. It's
And they're not trapping, they're just trees to monitor.
Yeah, but they will be cut down and then thoroughly examined to see
Okay.
if there is any incidence of emerald ash borer.
We volunteered near your trees.
And once they find them, what can one do about it?
Nothing.
Unfortunately.
This
Cut
is
it
pure-
down right away or wait till later.
Yes.
Yes, it's true. And the city has to put in place a plan to deal with trees in
Yeah.
these kinds of situations.
Where it has occurred, does it destroy all the
Yes.
all of them?
Yes,
Yeah.
And it
and
takes,
usually in a very few years.
right, 2 to 3 years. Unlike, what is it, sudden oak death? Or what is
Sudden oak death.
which that takes place within months or weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
But this is 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So if an infestation occurs here, hopefully by then we will have removed all our dead and dying trees already, because that'll be part of our plan. Hopefully we'll have removed all of the easy to remove young trees. and-
What percentage of our trees are ash? Is it like?
We're lucky in Athens because this is more of a forest situation, and it was only something like 5.8% of the trees inventoried in the city rights-of-way in 1991, assuming that was really
So
accurate.
it's less than 6% of the trees?
Yes.
But that's
Oh.
city right of way.
Right.
City right of
City
way.
right away, so we're
There-
not counting parks or
Right.
land.
There are a lot of ashes in forested areas, and you know, a lot of those are part of some of the lots in the Athens area and adjoining homes.
Yes, we did
Yards.
a tree identification session. Ann Bonner, the urban forester from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, gave us a introduction to tree identification, specifically to ash and things that look like it. And we walked up behind the Division of Forestry that's on East State Street, that ODNR office, on McGuffey Lane, and there were 1 or 2 trees that were on the inventory in 1991 at that site, and then in one individual's yard up behind the hill, which would be a forested hill, there were easily a dozen to, well, at least a dozen ash trees.
Is it inevitable that we'll be hit?
Not
Unless there's some big change or some unusual way to deal with it that is not on the horizon.
So right now, you think it's a very good chance we're going to be hit with the
Yes,
ash borer.
yes.
And once we're hit, there's very little we can do, and we stand to lose, say, 6%, at least in the city right-of-way.
There are ways of treating trees, but they're very expensive.
Right.
They are not foolproof, and where that it has been used, they found that where they're treated successfully for several years, after 2 or 3 years, the tree may start succumbing. And the city could not afford that. I mean, that would be an option for private homeowners, but not, it would be too expensive for any trees on city property.
So that's why we have to prepare for it by removing any dead and dying trees ahead of time, wherever we can.
And the dead and dying are more susceptible.
Well,
No,
No.
But actually, diseased trees are going to be more susceptible. But
Well-
in
It
China,
attacks even
well,
They
there's
only-
actually a very good economic argument for
Right.
doing it first,
Right.
because if you know you're going to have to remove them all
Right.
eventually, then it's better to try and spread this out over as long a period of time as
Okay.
you can.
Okay.
And so
All right.
you identify dead and dying trees and try and get
And remove them,
and
because
get
you're
them-
going to have to remove them anyway.
Yes.
And then instead of trying to remove all 6% at the same time, you'd at least remove,
Yes.
say, 1 or 2% of them. that are
We would
already
also hopefully encourage AEP to remove any ash rather than
Okay.
prune any ash. in
All
the
170 of
way.
them.
And once an ash tree dies, they tend to decline much quicker than other species, get more brittle more quickly,
And
weaker
then they're
more
susceptible
quickly.
to wind damage. and-
Wind damage, yeah.
more of a hazard.
Yeah.
And then there would be a fire hazard if there is a fire.
Well,
Well,
well, if they're just, if the stuff is just lying about, certainly.
Right.
But one of the questions that we have to answer at some point is, and this really is going to depend on advice of experts, is how long should we budget for in terms of if an infestation takes place, how long should we plan for the entire removal process to take place? In here I just suggested 5 years. I don't know whether that is reasonable yet or not. I mean, that's something that we're going to have to look at in terms of other communities and how quickly it's spread through a similar sized community. Do you have any knowledge of as to how
no,
many years it
no,
would
I
take?
don't, but I would think that we could get that information from some of the communities in Northeast Ohio and Michigan, Southern Michigan.
The university property, do you have a lot of ash?
yeah, we have about 130 or so that are in the heavily populated areas, lots in the woods. But we're taking the same approach that the tree commission is taking, the city's taking. You know,
Okay.
inventorying, we'll be removing those that are in the worst shape first, and we're planning on replacements as well as takedowns. So,
What kind of replacements are going to,
well, it depends on the site.
Okay.
You know, something suitable, certainly not an ash.
yeah, yeah.
But you know, I think as David is saying that it makes good sense to take them down incrementally rather than wait and then have to take them down all at once, because of the tremendous expense both in takedown and then in replacement. So we're going to try to phase it over years.
And are you working on like 5 years or longer?
Well, probably about 5 years.
Okay.
Because one of the issues that we'll only really know about once we've done an inventory is how much is it going to cost to remove all of the large healthy ash trees, and you know, we don't have to go to the mayor and say, well, how many, you know, this is how many trees we've got. It's going to cost this many thousands of dollars to do that. And he's going to have to figure out then how to budget that. And that may be another constraint on us. We may not be able to take them all in down 5 years. We might have to spread it over a longer period of time, which, you know, you then get a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, and if a tree is still healthy and alive, you know, that, yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And if it's not really posing, if it's not in a hazard-prone site, that would also discourage you from acting precipitously.
Could I just ask a question about replacement? Do you have any general guidelines, like we're going to replace these with a variety of varieties?
We always do that, don't we?
I always feel it's a good idea, but sometimes it's not always the plan.
You mean select a cultivar over a straight species? Is that what
Well,
you mean?
no, what I mean is, like, say, a policy, like, we're going to take down the ash trees, but we're not going to replace them all with oaks or maples or whatever, but we're going to have some oaks, some maples, some whatever, you know, we're going to replace with 5 species, and within these, we're not going to have the same variety of each one, but we're going to have.
Well, I think all those choices are going to be site-specific.
Okay.
And we're not even close to being at that stage yet. You know,
Sure.
we're still inventorying.
Sure.
I think, you know, you can put up with a placement of a number of trees that are the same species, you know, if it suits the goals of your landscape design, but you can't overdo it, and that's what we watch out for, is overdoing it. But, you know, we have areas where we have planted, you know, a dozen or even 20 of the same species tree to gain a certain effect. But I can't say at this point whether we'll
Right.
repeat that or not.
Right, but there's a tension between what's biologically the best and what's landscaping the best, and I think that's, you know, that I'm here to speak for the trees
Yeah.
for the biology.
You're talking about the monoculture. And,
Monoculture, yeah, for a number
Yeah,
of
yeah.
different
There's a lot of risk there.
David, do you have any other
Nothing at the
comment at this
moment,
point? We have some information from Ron Lucas, the interim director of streets, about the ILGARD program, perhaps providing an intern. Would you like to?
Well,
Yeah, probably. That's where the mic is. Sorry.
I'm Ron Lucas, Interim Director of Street Department, City of Athens. That's not guaranteed yet, Albie. It's basically a discussion we've started with ILGARD. They have taken over our GIS program to an extent.
Oh, wonderful.
Basically, we're paying ILGARD a lump sum per year to do GIS work for the city.
Okay.
One of the projects that we discussed this past week was the possibility of ILGARD helping us do this tree inventory. The key being making sure that the data that we collect can go into the GIS system that we are currently using, and I think that it will. But that's still an exploratory phase,
Okay.
and I'll give you more information as we get closer to that.
Very good.
The other suggestion that was made is to see if the Environmental and Plant Biology Department at OU or a similar department at Hocking could help through providing students in this area. And that's one thing, if someone could contact those departments and find out what they can do.
Yes. Who are the people doing the inventorying for OU for your 130 ash trees? Are you using grounds?
we have them already mapped.
Ah.
And so now it's a matter of going out there, probably myself and one or two others, and checking their condition, their size, and making note of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do for ours.
Yeah,
In some cases, though, we've got to find them.
that's very true.
Yeah. But that was one suggestion that was made as a potential resource, because presumably the ILGARD people are more concerned about receiving the data and then applying it to our GIS maps rather than going out and getting
Yeah, pretty
the
much.
data.
They have dedicated a graduate assistant to help us with our GIS, and that person would basically be a point where we can exchange the data.
Yeah.
I believe Ann Bonner also has an individual who is a GIS
She mentioned that to
mapping
me.
person, volunteer out in Amesville. So we might have some other people helping in that area. And we have some volunteers for helping with identification. We have an individual whom we would like to nominate for a position on the tree commission, an alternate position, and who has a great deal of knowledge about trees. In fact, knew almost as much as Ann Bonner at our tree ID session, it seemed to me, about trees. So we've got some volunteers, but we really are going to need a whole lot for the big inventory. For the ash tree inventory, that might not be quite so critical. There's only 173, and we do have the 1991
Well,
inventory.
that's where we can take it in stages and figure out what it is going to take in terms of people and time.
Yeah.
The other thing that was mentioned was the possibility of having computers that could be used to help store and record the positions. Now, what's the status of that?
Ann has not yet heard and won't until sometime in October.
Okay.
So that Athens is on the top of a list for use of Division of Forestry handheld computers to go out and do the survey. So probably the point where we get volunteers and materials together will be something like October, November. And these are trees that we can identify even without their leaves.
If this 5.8 or 6% is correct, and 4,000 trees are in the city right-of-way, which it was in the one survey taken,
Thank
I
you,
don't know,
Rob.
10 years ago, that would make around 240 trees, ash trees.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a bit more than the university has. And who knows how accurate the 4,000 is now.
It is not. I have checked out some of the trees in my neighborhood, and a lot of them are missing there. And I'm sure there are others that have been planted or have grown up in wooded areas.
Okay.
Now, the 173 is only an estimate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're just going to have to go out and look and see.
Right. If anybody else would like a hard copy of this really nice list that was put together by, let's see, Candy Bradley went through the inventory originally, the 1991 inventory, pulled out all the ash trees, and then Emily Wood went through and did a summary of trees that were listed as being under the electric wires, and those that had been listed as things to remove, and those listed as dead. So this was emailed around, but an email is a highly imperfect communications medium, so if anybody would like a copy. Does anybody else have anything else to say on the emerald ash borer at this point? I think the next thing we have to do is contact plant biology and do some.
I would
testing.
like to raise a point on starting to remove the younger trees.
Okay.
Probably we would not do that really soon, but I would like to wait until we get a report from these trap trees and get a better idea of how close it actually is to us, and see if we can get a little more accurate idea of when it may be in Athens. Because from the research that has been done, it moves naturally very slowly. But apparently there have been a lot of cases where the wood has been moved around or something like that, so that it is popping up other places. But I think it would be good to have a better idea of exactly where it is, and at least a more accurate estimate of when it might
And
actually get
we
here.
need also some idea of what we think of in terms of a young tree, because I was surprised at how large a tree, I think it was Marietta was thinking, I think it was Marietta was thinking of as a young
Yes,
tree. I think
yes.
it's up to 14 inches, and I was surprised.
And you were thinking of really,
Yeah, I was thinking of less than 6 inches.
yes, and you had also suggested for the trees around the community center, which include a lot of ash, of maybe removing every other one and replacing them rather than waiting until we would
Yeah,
have to
because
remove
they are
them
small
all.
They're
trees.
small.
Yeah.
But I think that's certainly something to consider.
So,
But we do need a definition at some point as to what we think of as a small or a
Yes,
young tree.
yes.
I don't know what, I mean, that possibly we need to ask our local tree removal people how the prices go, and then we need to see how big a tree Ron and his people can actually remove in one go.
Because the city
It's
services,
interesting because in the parks, I think we would have more luck as a street department, because we can remove by the root with equipment.
Yeah.
We are struggling with that in the residential areas.
Yeah.
So we can-
But you couldn't use that with the ones that are close to the community center building, could you?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In areas that have buildings or things like that, we can remove some trees, but we don't want to get
But
into too much.
let's take for example the community centre area, where there are probably trees going up to 4 inches now. I think
Right, we could take those out.
you could take those out, couldn't you? Yeah. So
As
that,
long as we don't have to get up in
Yeah.
things and start tying and things
And-
like that, we're okay.
and this is a potential resource where it's not going to cost the city additional money, because at times they'll have people and equipment available, and it can be done on a as available basis. I mean, it's not something we can.
We did the excavation, the tree removal at the on the new soccer fields on East State Street with a backhoe.
Yeah.
And we just we went to town basically on those trees, so we get away from the residences and in the parks, we can take those down.
oh, yeah, we could have some solid recommendations by the, sometime this winter before winter, for starting to do a couple of things perhaps.
On the issue of taking down the smaller ones earlier and save it because it'll be more cost effective, how quickly do these ash trees grow? Is it particularly, it grows faster than an oak,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
But not-
they're moderately fast. They're fairly fast for a good shade tree. I
Okay.
mean, they're not fast like some of the trees that we would not want to plant.
Norway maples, the ones that were so popular 30, 40 years ago.
Or the Siberian elm.
Oh,
That's a nice fast tree.
oh, okay.
Well, I will approach plant biology and see whether there are students available at Hocking Tech that we might use at
Because
some
this is
point, what their
something where
schedules are like.
it may be possible to actually get planned for a project, either at the undergraduate or graduate level, because a tree survey like this could be potentially useful, I think.
Yeah.
Things for students to actually be engaged in.
I have a feeling
But
that
it needs planning, that's
Right.
the
that will
issue.
fall more in Hocking College.
Yeah, they have to have a good
My
forestry program.
Yeah.
Personal experience in environmental plant biology.
Okay. Would you join me on,
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
is there anything else? Okay. Well, the people who are watching the program should also know that the mayor does indeed see this as something like a 5-year program with about $120,000 estimated cost momentarily, but not really very, very preliminary estimate, and that he wants also to see us include replacements, and the budgeting for replacements is part of the package, so it's not removal. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a landscape ordinance issue, and we have a plan. Actually, we have 2 copies, so we can crinkle paper over microphones on 2 tables. Sorry, fellas. And here is the Applebee's plan.
Could you orient us first, because I still
Okay.
couldn't.
I see
Oh,
north
I
is
see
down
East 8th
here.
Street. Somebody
Yeah.
wrote that
Top
in.
is
Okay,
East
good.
3rd Street, and
Yeah.
the left is 33.
So,
But it'll be the embankment of 33 as well.
yeah.
So they're alongside.
So this is eastbound on East State. Entry in this point, I would imagine only a right turn exit perhaps, or?
No,
but
there's
any-
no exit.
No exit, okay, so
There's only
people are
entry.
just coming in this way.
Yeah, I think they have
Yeah.
to go out the
Yeah,
traffic
they
light.
have to come out of the traffic light.
Okay.
And is this where, over here, where the new CVS building is going up?
Yeah.
There's a bank.
That's where there'll be a bank, and then CVS will be
Further
just
down.
off the page.
And there'll be a
Okay.
hotel over here where Paul is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's where you're sitting. Is the
Or where
hotel
you
on your
are.
map. and in front of Lee is where the CVS place is.
Okay.
yeah, and this is the old Athens County Engineers site for just general landmark purposes. So this is north. That's north on yours.
Okay, so this is the perimeter that Mike Nolan was talking about, and putting trees along the perimeter.
There's an 8-foot perimeter on the west side and the north side. There's an entry aisle, and this is the building itself. There are, let's see, on the schedule of trees, they have scheduled one red cutleaf maple and 10 autumn blaze maples, and let's see, 3 Bradford pears that are tucked up against the building itself
Do you mind if I
on
stand
the
over
east
here?
side.
I'd like to see some of this.
Red maple, October glory, 3 of those. Red oak. They're keeping some existing trees. There's some magnolia, interesting spelling, hybrid tree form that are
Angle, no.
back here.
This one, and this one here.
Yeah, and calorie flowering pear. And so the key,
My first reaction is if 1 inch is 30 feet, then these trees are further apart than we normally allow.
inches in the interior thing.
Yeah. So, for instance, those trees there are 2 inches apart. So we can certainly, I think, request more trees along the western boundary
Maple.
and also along the northern boundary as well, because
Oh, well.
the standard is to plant trees every 30 feet.
Yeah, so, okay, let us,
Along
The interior islands
Those that are short,
are
there's the courthouses.
how far
maybe
apart?
that's a difficult.
Some of the
Yeah,
courthouse
here
is
is a
just
better one.
long-term. I don't think the
It's
moonbeam is as long-term as
150.
Zagreb.
Nothing but the finest architectural tools.
170.
Here's a Knights of Columbus
170
ruler.
Steve, how many cars can you park in a width of 170 feet?
19.
At least 9 feet.
Divide that by 9 at minimum.
Okay, so these are further apart than recommended by the landscape ordinance.
These islands right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
He's talking about between here and here.
yeah,
Yeah, these right here.
yeah, yeah. They-
That could be, because I believe that is double loaded parking through there. Drive aisle, parking perpendicular off each side.
Mhm,
So there is one, and there's one on the end,
mhm.
and an island out here. But if that distance from this tree to that tree is greater than 90 feet, that's more than 10 cars.
So
And that's an interior requirement,
Yeah,
not a perimeter requirement.
yeah.
According to the scale, it's 1 inch equals 30
Yeah,
feet
so
here.
3 inches would be 90 feet,
Mhm.
which would be there. That would be 90 feet.
They are putting trees on facing, so that it actually does provide better shade this
Yeah.
way, however. On this side, parking does occur here, right?
Yeah. I would think so.
Calorie
Yeah.
flowering
We
pear.
actually need to see the plan with the parking.
Oh.
Striped, you mean lines
Yeah.
or something?
Striped lines.
Yeah. Or
What's
a
in
written
each?
number in it, what's going on.
Magnolia hybrid tree form. So is
So
that a,
what is that
a
really?
small tree, do you know?
Probably.
If we knew what it was, then we might have a clue.
Probably not a southern magnolia, so it's probably a.
Is there one of your tree books over to?
Yes,
25
there is
foot.
a magnolia hybrid form.
Well, that, I don't know that there's any specific
It's-
tree that would be described by that term.
Well, there's a page
I mean,
with it
you-
that has 6 trees under it. So
You can check and see what magnolias he has in there. But I think most magnolias actually are tree form.
Yeah, that's what I didn't get.
Well, they can be trained like that, limbed up,
Yeah, but,
Oh,
but,
and that could be anything.
yeah. The star magnolia is the only one that is relatively small that I can think of.
Saucer,
Well,
25 feet.
shall we, see, we can
That
also
can get pretty big.
Yeah.
look at this
Very
in
broad.
a committee format with a map that has the striping on it.
I actually do have a set of state-approved building plans at the office. If I'd known, I could have brought
Okay.
them over.
And
But
they have
I
the-
can, yeah,
They have the
I could make that available, yeah, if you want to have like a
Yeah.
committee meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they probably
Do it
need
that
to
way.
move, judging from the construction activity at the site.
I think on this plan too, one of the big things, reasons it needs consolidation is there's landscaping against the building as opposed to along the drive aisle at the perimeter. This is where your 8-foot buffer is required, not over here, against the aisle. And then across the back, there's no buffer. It goes right up against the parking lot for the hotel.
Yeah.
So those are the two big areas, right there and right there, that require the consolidation approval.
Yeah, but I was going to ask about how we should consider these areas, because, technically, if this is a separate property, we're required to have an 8-foot buffer there and alongside it for this one as well.
Right. The ordinance would say that there has to be a 16-foot buffer.
Yes,
Total, 8 on each property. And that'd be in this area right here where nothing's indicated.
Yeah.
yeah. And the
But-
same would apply at the bottom here.
Right, same back by the hotel.
Right now, this is a sidewalk, is that it? Just paved? This border you're talking about? This,
This one right here.
Yeah,
Is
what
that a
is that?
sidewalk?
what is that exactly? That's just a border? or-
It looks like it's part of the landscaping. I can see a partial indication of a tree down here.
So we're seeing some of
And
the
this
bank.
down in the corner, it looks like a ramp for
Hmm.
people to come. There must be a change in grade
Oh, yeah, right there.
between these two paved areas. This is for somebody to get up there, to transition from
Do we
one
know
lot
what
to the
this
other.
what this symbol here is supposed to mean?
Yeah, there's one over here too, I see.
we
Is
mean-
that a
Is
light?
that a light?
Might
Well, it
be.
looks like a lamp, yeah.
Oh, lamps there, I guess.
There's no key for it.
But again, evidently, this is an indication of the property of Oak Hill Bank and not of Applebee's. So essentially what they've done is they've taken their buffer and flipped it from the perimeter to up against the building.
Okay. So that's, then we could consider this to be equivalent to something being planted along here, which is one
Yeah.
possibility.
And the ordinance doesn't specify any landscaping between your building and your parking area, it's just between your parking area and your neighbor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Aesthetically, what they're trying to do with the pears is really kind of nice, and they've got a very nice pattern here, although they don't have enough of the trees, perhaps. So they're looking at pears to have white blossoms at a certain time of this. Applebee's buildings, are those red by chance?
A green and red.
Green and red, yeah. So you can see there's a kind of aesthetic that they're working for. But I don't know about
The-
the calorie, the
The
Bradford
the
pear is a bad
Bradford
idea, I
pear
think.
is not a good selection, and calorie pear is a whole group of pears, which includes the Bradford pear. There are other selections
So you gotta get specific.
that are very good, but you can't tell what they mean by calorie pear.
Yeah. Shall we
And-
make some suggestions of specific types of pears, because they want pears?
Specific cultivars of calorie pears
Yeah.
Right, so we,
Let us offer them a,
that do not tend to split.
yes, the Bradford pear has a nasty habit of, as it gets older, simply breaking. And there was a really spectacular one on the corner of Elmwood and Watt, I think, that did that this spring, just broke. They're too dense.
now, isn't there a new form of Bradford pear that's supposed to be much stronger?
It's
Was there?
It's one of the calorie pears.
Okay,
But
all right,
the-
it's not.
The Bradford pear is a very specific
Right.
cultivar.
Okay, so this is a Bradford-like pear.
Yes.
I'd recommend, in these cases here, they're close to the building, wouldn't they want a more upright
Yeah, something Columbia
variety?
or
So like Cleveland's.
Cleveland Select. Yeah,
Or
okay.
even Red Spire. But Aristocrat is a good substitute for Bradford if they're looking for the type of growth habit that Bradford has.
You mean like over
That-
in there?
Yeah, over in here where it's more open,
Mhm.
I think that would be a good substitution, Aristocrat pear.
Got those secretaries really good. That's-
Great.
Only after I've been reminded.
And they get to the same size. I've been very impressed with how large Bradford pears can get. Somewhere it said 20 feet, but I've seen them
Oh, yeah, much bigger.
way
Mhm.
bigger
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we will,
And we're starting to talk shade.
well, they need to be, we need to see something with striping, trees closer together. In general, on 30-foot centers along that.
Yeah, 30-foot centers and different kinds of pears.
Right, and
And
Do you want them to be
something
more
more,
specific about these magnolias?
yes,
And,
yes.
I think they're just talking about limbed up magnolias.
Do we have a
That have
suggestion
been
for them?
grown
I mean,
to
that's
that
the other way to
Okay.
go.
having done a moment of research here on the magnolia hybrids, they mentioned 9, and this book was not published last year. So that the possibilities are substantial. Well, this is 9 years old, this book. So the information is probably a good 10 or 11 years old. So I'm sure there are more hybrids now.
And they're all grown to tree form, correct? And that's what you'd want
Well-
with in a parking area. You wouldn't want the shrubbery growth at the base
Yes.
of the plant,
Right.
to hide the cars or hide whatever, and to be able to see under. So I'm sure they're all.
Now, and the ones they're
Limbed up.
talking about here are all not really in the shade tree category. There's more the understory, the small tree category.
yeah, is this going to be a too hostile a site for a magnolia hybrid? Because it's asphalt all around.
Do we keep running into problems with people with these plans not having like a, I don't know, a knowledgeable tree person doing this planning? Because we're always,
Well,
I don't know. It
Well,
looks
this
like
is
it
actually
looks like a
pretty
pretty
good.
nice
This is-
selection
yeah,
here.
this
It
is
is?
not
Okay,
bad.
okay.
I think, and
No,
Panich and Noel, I
it's
do
just,
this
all
well. I
we're
think
doing
pretty
is
good.
tweaking it.
You can always argue,
Yeah,
the
okay.
merits. What's better, a Chevy or a Ford? But for instance, the Magnolias in a parking
The
lot.
Chevy,
But the magnolias in a parking lot, some might object to that at the time that the blooms are starting to shatter and fall.
Right.
Because they really can litter pavement. So, but they sure are stunning in bloom.
Yeah.
I think
on
Lee-
the edge over here, they'll be fine.
Lee is making a point here that perhaps we should have something larger than
Maybe we
magnolias.
should have shade trees. That's
You're talking
what
about
I
over
like.
here, right?
Yeah. So you're saying really the magnolias would be better off on the edges, and we should try and we should suggest that they put shade trees.
Well,
on the
maybe
parking lots.
closer to the building even, and shade trees in the parking lot.
Mhm.
They're not gonna have that much shade over here until these grow up, won't they? I mean, essentially, this is the west side, so they're gonna get west sun
Yeah.
coming in. Unless there's more further out.
Well, you've
Well,
got
these
the
are-
embankment going
Oh,
on
yeah.
there
Yeah.
with the existing native trees.
It's nice too that they're keeping some trees, although they're removing one for an aesthetic reason.
I was wondering about that tree up here at the front corner that is being removed. I think that's a really nice sweet gum, isn't it? Are they doing some grading there, changing the grade?
They might be. I noticed there's a utility pole that has been excavated around, which has about 4 feet of, or 2 feet of soil around it, and then a new grade below it. So it's. I haven't gone to look. I'm sorry to say. I just. Well, shall we give this information to them? Offer to meet in committee as soon as they give us something that's with our suggestions, and we can give them final approval. We can meet fairly quickly.
So how, are you going to write them a letter, or are you just going to contact them?
I will use your notes.
Thank you.
And, well, I will, we'll collectively
Yes.
read his notes, yeah, and send that along, and send it through Steve. How about that?
It's fine. Yeah, I'm dealing with Applebee's right now, and actually on the construction plans.
Yeah.
They're working on obtaining permits to install for water and sewer. There's continued discussion about access. They're going to go next month to Board of Zoning Appeals to request a sign variance. So, yeah, this is just one of many things going on at that corner. So, yeah, if you want to run that through my office, that's fine.
But
Okay.
generally, this is a very good beginning.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
This is,
Yeah. And it's a difficult site with having all these properties banged up together like this. It's not an easy thing to do when they're that close together.
Yeah, you'd ask about excavation too, and there isn't an extensive amount of excavation that had to occur there. Because the way the engineer's office was, it was pushed way up, against the street, and they're looking to get grades a lot lower at these sites, so there's necessarily, you don't want a very quick drop off from the street. So there may even be some small retaining walls or something right there. So they have to quickly get from the street to the site without too much slope.
Are the plans for the bank and the motel available yet?
No, they're not.
Because that might help us with the consolidation of these sites.
Well, that might be another suggestion for
Because I know Mike has
Mr. Knoll to
brought
submit a revised
Yeah.
4.5 acre site plan.
okay, yes. We'll ask
And that way, I mean, not that it necessarily has to be real specific, but at least you can get an idea of what the entire site looks like.
Ask him if there is a revised.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, we'll do that.
Right, because the plan that you looked at originally, I think, was the whole thing with specifically a detail on CVS.
Yeah.
And then with the anticipation that each one of these pieces would come in for final review as development plans progressed and more detail became available. This is piece 2 of 4 pieces.
So, well, so far so good, but we just need a little bit more, so, yeah. that's- Thank you very much, Steve, for the information. If you will email me or look at those pieces. As soon as we're done crinkling, okay. We have some tree permit activity, but actually look less than it looks like on the agenda. Thanks to Ron Lucas, we have not got to do anything about the A.O. Pie House, 8 Church Street. The street department did clearing around the security light last year, right?
Yeah, we did do some clearing of that area before, and I haven't looked at it yet. It's something that I plan to look on, see if we can do it again.
It's a safety issue in an area with a lot of traffic, and it's a sorority house back there. So thank you very much. And there was an emergency permit issued last Thursday on the 14th. Ann Bonner and I looked in sequence at a site where there was there were 2 trees in the path of trench activity for a collapsed sewer, and she said that there was no way in the world those trees could survive the digging that was going to happen. So both were removed, and I guess the sewer line is in place. The people in the house were, that was really an emergency situation, probably should have moved even faster. We have a request for another tree removal from a place on the west side, and I'll give this to Ann to do an assessment. The address is, actually it's a vacant lot, but it is next to 38 Walker and directly across the street from 39 Walker. And it is a silver maple, I think, with 6 or 7 leaders. It's next to the driveway of a white house with a blue metal base around the foundation, and people want to look at the, let's see, is this GIS information, or?
Yeah, it looks like it.
There are some chalet-type rentals directly across the street
Yeah, I know that
from
place.
What's the
tree.
reason for the removal?
Steve, could you address this?
First.
This particular area is a site of quite a bit of acreage. Several years ago, it was purchased by, I believe, Dane McCarthy, Susan Searles, and Linda Hiller.
Oh.
And they basically wanted, as best they could, to preserve the area. It's a very, it's hard to believe that there's that kind of woods right in the middle of town, to be honest with you. It's a ravine that goes all the way from essentially the intersection of 2nd Street, Carpenter, Lancaster, Columbus Road, that traffic signal up there, and goes all the way down to Walker Street. Dane McCarthy would like to build a home on a lot there. It's a vacant lot. When the ravine comes down, there's actually 2 drainage areas, and there are 2 culverts. One appears to possibly go underneath the house right next door. We're very close to it, and then there's another culvert that transmits water from that ravine to the storm sewer system. So, and there are brick head walls on each one. It would take a lot of work to actually move those brick head walls and move where those culverts are at. So what Mr. McCarthy needs is this tree removed, essentially in order to gain access to the property. It's right where essentially where he needs to put his driveway in. I went out to the site and looked at it with him. That is, it's a multi-trunk tree with, I guess we'll have Ann look at it, but there are a lot of insects and there's a lot of stuff going on at the base of this tree. It's overhanging the house that's there too on another lot. So this isn't one, I mean, it is, he wants to remove so we can put in a driveway, but there may be some other, the situation could be greater than that, actually.
Well, what we do in this situation is to ask Ann Bonner's opinion of whether this makes sense for the tree, the site. We can follow her recommendations or not, and of course we can be overridden by the Safety Service Director. But generally speaking, Ann's opinion is the opinion that is followed. So.
And from what you've seen, there's no other way to access the property.
It would create more difficulty. Actually, I think when Ann looks at the tree, it needs to go, even if he's not going to build a house there. It's, I think it's in poor condition. It's overhanging the house. I think it's got some problems right now.
Willing to remove the tree if we allow it?
Well, that was part of the discussion that I had with Mr. McCarthy. I think there's a general opinion out in the community that the tree commission has a large pot of money that they just they go out and cut trees down. I'm trying to explain to everybody that the council appropriates a limited amount of money, and these cuttings take place on a sliding scale from emergency to we'll get to it someday and everything in between. The permit that's given essentially is to permit the person to cut the tree if you're allowing them to. It's just that the city has had some additional monies where they've actually taken out trees for people. So it's not always, there's not always monies available just because it's a tree that needs to be removed on the right-of-way. My department, when we're doing housing inspections, sometimes we'll write up that a tree needs to be trimmed off a roof because it's causing problems with a gutter, or it's scraping a roof. Then we come to find out that the tree we're asking a property owner to cut off their roof is a city tree. And there are occasions, and on most occasions, the tree commission says, yes, go ahead and cut the tree, but you do it. We're not, it's not an emergency, it's not high on a priority list, it's a healthy tree, it's not threatening the structure, but it does need to be pruned back. So I think I'm just really saying that so people in the community know there's not a guy waiting in a truck tomorrow. I know Ron volunteered there to do quite a few things with the street department, but just because you get permission to remove a tree doesn't mean that the city's going to pay for the removal. And there's also, I think it's clearing up a little bit now about stump removal also. That's never been included even when the city's removed a tree.
we don't
So that
remove
would be
stumps.
at an expense for the property owner to take care of the, the trunk and the root itself.
Now, we have a priority ranking of tree maintenance for prunings or removals, and I'm going to pass this around. It's a policies and procedures sheet that goes on the, has in the past gone on the back of tree permits, and I emailed this for folks to have recently. The tree permit has several possibilities of an emergency. If it's truly an emergency, the city will take it down without you really coming to the tree commission if this thing is falling. It's an immediate hazard. A priority one, that the tree should go on the next contract, and the contracts are done in groupings of jobs, so that that doesn't mean it's going to happen next week necessarily, possibly more like next month or the month after. And then there is priority two, future action might be required. Those trees are reevaluated before being put on the next contract, and if they get better, we take them off the list. Priority three, no action required, and trees are reevaluated periodically to monitor them. And priority four, no action appropriate. It's a tree for which really there's a request due to perhaps personal reasons. And the idea is to spend the money, what little money the Tree Commission has, to benefit the greatest number of citizens with the tax dollars. So if something is in a high traffic area, say on a street where there's school children going to school, and there's likelihood of tree limbs falling, we will take that down, and take the limb off pretty fast. But yes, so Steve did a good summary. Ron, I thank you very much. We'll thank you. We'll.
Any other things that you are requesting from the street department? Right-of-way issues that we might have?
Not for the Tree Commission, I don't think. Has anybody else got something for Ron?
You asked us to talk with you about planning for medians.
Yeah, I have all your emails that you sent
Okay.
me in a folder, and I really appreciate all of those.
And if
advice.
you want to do any planting of shrubs in the medians, decisions will have to be made by October.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be able to do anything this year.
Okay.
We've been mowing it.
Okay.
Just to keep up, but.
Yeah, the budget's not great, is it?
Right,
Yeah.
we're not, we just don't have the big budget right now to do the planning that we want to do.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that's not off the table. It's-
Okay.
When Andy gets back, I'll be talking to him about it too, so. Thanks for the emails, I appreciate that. Some good information you sent me.
Thank you, Ron. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, well, we'll send the Walker Street request to Ann, and people should go and take a look, please. It's an interesting site.
Which is this?
The Walker Street.
Oh, right.
Tree removal, 3839 Walker. The next item is landscape award nominations. We have several, and Emily, you know of several of them.
Well, I think that Lee and I looked over one of them again this evening, and we've talked about it, and we would like to recommend Century Bank.
Century or Citizens?
Citizens
The
Bank,
bank
the one on
the new one
Stimson.
on Stimson.
Sorry.
At the corner, is it Campbell and Stimson?
Campbell and Stimson,
Right.
yeah.
You have a set of plans for it right there,
Yes.
as-built plans.
This is these are the plans if you
Oh,
want to.
good. So is
Uh,
this,
There you go.
there should be a name on here.
It's Citizens, trust me.
Okay, good. This is, just kind of double check. I prepared a report with various candidates, but, and I was glad to go over it in detail, but, from all the nominations, this seems to be head and shoulders above the others at this time.
At this time, yes.
this
We've got
time.
some other, and it also is, this bank has been nominated by the Chamber of Commerce. Citizens Bank was nominated by Jennifer Simon of the Chamber. I think we have one other nomination, which was the Kevin Klein apartments at 197 West State Street. So the deadline is the end of the month, and if we may get other nominations before that, by that time. So
It may be premature to nominate that because I don't think they've finished their planting.
yes,
So
he
it
has.
might be good to have that all in place before.
Yeah,
He was talking about adding some shrubs,
Yes,
which
and
have
I
not
think-
been put in.
I think he's doing fall plantings.
Okay.
I know he's doing fall
Right.
plantings.
So
But that
probably
might be a
better.
candidate for next year.
Right.
It's an
After those are
incredible,
in.
difficult site. He's
Oh,
done an incredible
yes,
job on it.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll wait then until the end of the month for the final
Right.
decision.
Right.
We have to visit the sites in any event.
But I did go and look at the parking lot behind the Castrop Center, and there are a lot of trees. So anyway, I compiled information on that and went back to the Parfit accounting business on Columbus Road and gathered information there. So if anybody wants any particulars,
No.
the
Those are all-
positive and negatives of
Yeah.
each site.
Well, those are all good candidates.
Mhm.
This is really encouraging that we're getting more and more really solid kinds of landscaping around businesses. Okay, the next item is that we've been alerted to the possibility of funding from the Department of Transportation for what's called the Gateway Landscaping Program, and it's a small fund, $500,000 in the state, making money available for highway landscaping in Ohio communities. We're in District 10 of the Department of Transportation, and there are 2 counties in our district that have gateway sites. One is in Logan, and the other is in Noble County. We have the possibility, the Tree Commission could put together a grant application for trees and other plant materials to go around a city entrance sign that would be out on East State Street. And remember, several years back, there was a plan drawn up for that city entrance sign.
Does this need to be in the state right of way?
That's conceivable, yes. Or, well, this is a very very slight overview, the information that I have.
Because this sounds similar to that program we looked at a couple of years ago, which was for the state right of way, which is unusual because they don't normally give us permission to put things there.
That's right, it's a thou shalt not area.
Suggestion then was to think about the areas of 33. Now, of course, we've got the south end of 33 as well as the north, where there could be possibilities.
Yes,
It really depends on what the state will allow along those highways
yeah.
and their rights of way.
What's the deadline for this?
That I don't have either. I was given, I've got all sorts of quote information, and I had to go to the website to get the Gateway Landscaping Program overview, which does not include a deadline either. It was announced in January of this year, and there are already 2 things in District 10 that have put together some sort of gateway sites. So we just need a little bit more information. This is information I was given, and it has to do more with the information that's handed to a contractor to make a bid and what the limitations are for placement of plant materials. Yeah, we may have a small committee meeting on this also. If indeed it is those smaller, if it were to follow the gateway plans that we have had so far, it would be a site that would have something like 8 trees and some sort of Athens announcement. And so it would be a grant for the 8 trees and some other plant material. This was not.
So we need some more information.
We need some more information, but I was asked to bring that up. There's also a Tree City USA application that's now just being started, and Bonner sent us the application information, and that will be done through us and through the mayor's office. And that will go in November 1st or so, I think. I'll keep you posted on that. The last item is Arbor Day 2006. As you remember, we postponed Arbor Day to get out of the way of the Water Polo Beautification Day, a really spectacular volunteer effort. We have I would like to recommend a particular tree for this. Mayor Abel is contributing a legacy tree. We have a legacy tree program where one could, for a cost of, I think it was about $400, have a tree planted someplace in the city, in a park, with a plaque, with some maintenance. And this is a tree that he has contributed in the legacy tree program in memory of Wayne Key, who was the service safety director until just very recently, when he died last month. So Mayor Abel has chosen a white dogwood constellation Coosa, and it will be planted at the community center. And I think as soon as it's planted in the ground and we can get people alerted, that might be a good. That would be the.
We need to make sure it's got some
They
good
alerted
shade, or at least it's
Yeah.
protected on at least one
Yes,
side.
I did mention that,
Okay.
and he's. It sounds like it's going on the. Let's see. There are other trees around it.
Well, anyway, as long as that is being considered, because putting these in the middle of somewhere is.
And did you say it's the form that's not susceptible to the?
It's a Coosa.
It's a Coosa.
Yeah.
I think Constellation actually is a hybrid, which is resistant to anthracnose. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And all
Yeah.
you got to do is remember to remove the packing material.
I'm sure we'll get that.
If your back is to East State Street and you're facing the community center, this tree will be off the forward right corner.
Oh, so you've seen the site?
Yeah.
You think
Okay.
it's
Oh,
a
thank
good
you.
site for a dogwood to get
Yeah, I
into?
do.
Okay.
It's not a flowering dogwood, it's a Coosa dogwood. So
So that
it can take this exposure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
No,
Okay.
Is
Oh,
that
thank
the
you.
kind that forms those large fruits in
Looks
the fall?
sort of like a strawberry.
Yes, right, and they
Mhm.
have not dimples, but they have little knobs
Segments
on
on
the
it.
fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bloom after the leaves come out. So
Anyway, it's very
It-
handsome. There are a bunch in Norfolk, Virginia, on the street where my son's apartment is. They were falling on the street and getting squashed, but they were still very handsome.
Well, this will
I
be
think
a
I've seen one
grassy
in Raymond
area,
like
so
that.
Yes.
it's not an
That
issue.
is-
Pardon?
Do you have a
That
sense of
dogwood with
when
little
it might be planted?
Red things, circle things.
Right, they're not
Kevin
the
asked me.
Not
to
the
come
little
out and
berries.
take
not the berries. These are
my recommendation.
Like little ping
Fruits.
pong, not ping pong balls.
they're different.
Yeah, they look more like raspberries,
Right.
large raspberries.
But they're not shaped like raspberries.
Well, they're sort of oval.
Okay.
They aren't indented
Okay.
like the raspberries.
They're bumpy.
Well, this will be a very handsome thing. As soon as we know when it's going to be there in fall planting, then we will organize the Arbor Day celebration.
Okay.
Does that sound all right? That was it's a beautiful memory. We have one last order of business, if nobody else has any other additional things, and that is we have a volunteer who is interested in being on the tree commission, and we would like to add him as an alternate. We are one alternate down, and I think we never did fill the 2 alternate slots. So this is an opportunity to get somebody knowledgeable, David Sinkoff, to join us. And
I don't know, yeah,
may
when
we
somebody's-
ask that nomination go to to the mayor and to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just bring it to the mayor, he'll bring it to us.
Okay. All right. Sir.
Some quick information.
Yes.
I've been in contact with, and actually kind of going back and forth with some potential landscapers at the Bennigan site. Final site grading is taking place, pavement of the parking lot, so it's getting down to time to plant. There was some discussion back and forth about an alternative planning on the west side of the property against the mall parking lot because of the dampness of the area. So I think we've got that squared away. The pavement started out there. I didn't see the tree islands. I don't know if they're going to cut the pavement out and put them in later, but I'll keep an eye on that. I've been talking with Mike Finn at Chesapeake Realty. They hold the lease for all the property from Ponderosa down to Walmart with the Ohio University. And we had some discussions about their project causing amendment to the landscape ordinance, and Mike Finn from Chesapeake Realty, when I was speaking with him, said they have a plan now to go back and voluntarily retrofit some more tree islands. So
Very good.
we'll keep an eye on that and see if that happens. The only other thing, I've been getting requests from organizations about landscaping requirements at university estates. Well, essentially, there are no requirements for university estates. It simply says that if it's either a subdivision or a planned unit development, they present a landscape plan. So I can't tell people that are bidding on the jobs what the requirements are. Essentially, what I'm saying is you might also want a contract not for the planning, but for the design, because you just have to present something first. So I'm working through those kinds of things now. It's not a strict application of landscape ordinance. As a matter of fact, it's two phrases contained in the subdivision regulations for commercial and residential subdivisions, and also in the planned unit development section. So, and it's the same process we've gone through with Campus Edge. With the new developers, Edwards Communities, they'll have to submit another landscape plan because their site plan is different.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's Groundhog Day or somebody mentioned, but you'll get to see another plan for what's called the Summit at Coates Run.
Very.
So those things are open-ended. I'm trying to get in the bidders' minds. I can't give you a list.
Are they aware that it'll have to come for review before the tree commission?
It does say that in the plan,
I mean,
Right.
regulations.
Normally what happens is some of the engineering work that's required of the planning commission takes a lot more time than to get with a landscape architect. So normally you're the first group that sees any part of final plans for any project. That seems to be how it's gone with subdivisions and planned unit developments. So as a matter of fact, you've already looked at, approved, but commented to council on the Campus Edge plan, and Campus Edge is on hold at the moment.
Yeah.
Going back to Bennigan's, one thing I noted about the way that that's been graded now is that there are more areas of steep slope for their property than I realised when we first saw their plans. And they need to be reminded that we don't really want grass on those steep slopes.
Yeah, the slope in the front doesn't seem, it seems worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
The one in the back is kind of dramatic to
And
me.
the one at the side, on the east side as well, is much steeper than I
Right.
imagined it was going to be.
Yeah, in some areas too where it drops off the paved access that goes back to the Hampton, those slopes are pretty steep right
Yes,
there.
yeah,
Yeah, the dramatic runoff.
yeah.
That's one of the issues I've been dealing with, is transmission of stormwater from neighbor to neighbor into the stormwater system. So that's why I was out there, for a drainage issue, and I noticed all the pavement going down and the conversations with the landscape contractor. So I just wanted to give you an update on that.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else? No?
So the
I
next
think
meeting
our
is
next meeting is
17th, 7 p.m.?
Yes, although we will meet at whatever moment we get Applebee's stuff as a committee to look at the landscape.
Okay.
Can you drop it off at your house?
Boy, yeah, that's service. Thank you very much.
I'll do it tomorrow if you're not there. I'll put it.
Okay, there's that little...